Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. So much of your success is due to you. Is influenced by how people perceive themselves in the presence of you. Are they perplexed after speaking with you? Or are you certain of your position? Are they hesitant to disagree with you? Or self-assured that you'll be open to fresh ideas, or is there new evidence? Critical thinking helps you think more clearly. And self-assurance in a discourse. Chief Curiosity Seeker and founder Applied Curiosity Lab is a place where you may test your curiosity. Following this course, you'll have response scripts, as well as topics to use in discussions as well as in arguments. You'll also learn how to use reasoning to communicate, how to build strong arguments and stay away from the ones that aren't good, and how to keep productive conversation going, even if you strongly disagree, or if one of you needs to make a decision. Whether you're a seasoned or up-and-coming executive, by the completion of this course, you'll be able to communicate more effectively thanks to new methods. And you'll be able to think critically. Have you ever been caught off guard during a conversation? You thought the conversation was heading in one direction, right? And suddenly, out of nowhere, it began to move in an unsettling direction that you hadn't thought of in the direction of an argument. What happens next is described by neuroscientists. Our prefrontal cortex, deep within our heads, the neurons grow less receptive to the opinions of others. Our brains can no longer process their argument. Whether or not it is backed up by excellent or bad evidence, we dismiss evidence that contradicts our beliefs, our preconceived notions, and look for proof that proves that, according to behavioral experts, confirmation bias is catching up with us. Individual and cultural variances exist. Alter the way people think about debates. My entire family enjoys arguing. It's similar to sports. The remaining half, not at all. Unless we learn otherwise, we are doomed. We may have a natural aversion to debates, especially if they're ineffective and unconstructive. However, this perception is subject to change. When we understand the worth of a well-thought-out argument, where each person has strong arguments for their ideas, provides counter-arguments to opposing viewpoints, and evaluates the arguments advanced by others who are opposed to you. Arguments are attempts to reason through a situation. You come to a conclusion by discussing and assessing reasons. When done correctly, a useful tool is a constructive argument. And it's a lovely thing. When speaking from the standpoint of critical thinking, a disagreement isn't a threat. It's a chance to learn something new. What we believe our opponents believe should come from our adversaries, but from people who share our viewpoint. However, it must be established, reframed, and agreed upon as a chance to learn ahead of time. You must first create confidence together with your debate partner. This is how it seems. Agree to change your goal from persuasion to persuasion mode to the manner of comprehension. To begin, try expressing something along these lines. Hey, I'm excited to debate with you. I'm quite interested in learning more about your viewpoint. What do you think about this? I'll pay attention to you. I'll explain my position to you. We'll talk about persuasion later. Is it possible for us to agree on a common goal? If they agree, inquire more. Do you want to take the lead? If they can't agree on the argument's starting purpose, you don't have the right circumstances in place for a well-thought-out argument. If they do reach an agreement, prepare to gain the following advantages. 1. You'll gain a better knowledge of your own thoughts, positions and beliefs. 2. A deeper comprehension of those with whom you have a disagreement. 3. There is a wide range of concepts. The fourth point is innovation. Finally, arguments can indicate that you are incorrect. What? How can that possibly be advantageous? When you're not open, that is, to the possibility of making a mistake, so you don't learn from your mistakes, it feels the same to be wrong as it does to be right. Constructive debate is a skill that can be learned. For admitting when you're mistaken as a result, you can be less wrong than you used to. You've made a contribution to your knowledge bank. That could be excruciating at first. But, in the end, that's fantastic. Scientists didn't understand much until lately. About the brain and its role in emotion regulation versus logic-based communication, we learned a lot from neuroscientists in the 1980s. Eliot's frontal lobe was damaged, and he lost a portion of his brain. When a tumor is removed by surgery, he retained his high IQ following the procedure. He didn't show any emotion, though. His mind couldn't make the connection between reasoning and feeling. As a result, he was unable to effectively communicate. And, somewhat unexpectedly, incapable of making even the most basic decisions. It turns out that emotional and rational reasoning are not mutually exclusive. Both are necessary for good communication. Our healthy brains are wired for both emotional and cognitive functions. But for many of us, logical communication, the emotional side of the equation, is the default. The foundation of communication based on emotions is a combination of pride, sympathy, aspiration, and feelings. The foundation of communication based on critical thinking, that's what we'll concentrate on here, logic and clarity. So, what does it mean to communicate logically? Constructing arguments with logic is a form of communication. Establishing acceptable truth assertions based on facts as well as using simple language. Putting this into practice isn't as simple as it appears. Because there is a distinction to be made between facts, truths, and opinions aren't immediately apparent. Philosophers devote their lives to the study of philosophy, arguing these distinctions, but for the purposes of our discussion, let's dissect the differences in a method that ensures success. That your communication improves dramatically. Mo, a former client, was in charge of new business development. For a company that sells cosmetics, they had recently created an app for data collection about how their clients make decisions about what they put on their skin. Creams, lotions, and treatments for a wide range of skin issues. Mo collaborated with statisticians. It was his responsibility to convey the lessons learnt. Based on the data, the first point Mo wanted to make to the team was this: was it benzoyl peroxide that did it? A popular acne treatment component more effective than salicylic acid for reducing acne? The question is as follows: is this an assertion of fact, truth, or opinion? When you consider this as a statement of fact, it's a lot easier to figure out what's a fact assertion. 78% of those polled agreed. Benzoyl peroxide was shown to be effective. Salicylic acid is a superior way to reduce acne. It's also less difficult to draw out a point of view. A better ingredient for skin cream is benzoyl peroxide. These definitions have a lot of layers to them. However, in order to achieve our goal of improved communication, these are quite useful to me. Existing information, facts. Regardless of how it is regarded. It's a truth that the people who took part in the skin survey are women. They reported in the manner that they did. It is undeniable that fire produces heat. Truths are assertions based on our observations and logic. It's plausible to assume that benzoyl peroxide is the culprit. More effective than salicylic acid for reducing acne. It is an unavoidable fact that fire will burn. Opinions and personal preferences. Acne creams with benzoyl peroxide are more effective. Compared to salicylic acid, fire is quite harmful. This was explained to Mo's team. Benzoyl peroxide was mentioned by 624 of the 800 respondents. Salicylic acid was found to be more effective in treating acne. If our sample was representative of the population, it's safe to presume that benzoyl peroxide is involved. Does a better job of reducing acne and is most likely salicylic acid is not the best ingredient for acne creams. He began with a fact before sharing his opinion. He was logical in his communication. Consider these distinctions to avoid treating facts as facts. In the same manner, there are truths and opinions. Your communication will become more clear as a result of this. When communicating with logic, this is the goal. During chats with coworkers or spends time on social media, there are many of statements to choose from regarding what you should think or what is true. We all make claims, some of which may be supported by evidence. To support them are these claims, however, supported by evidence without any flaws. Can you locate any cracks if there are any? A good argument is carefully crafted. Based on a strong foundation, they aren't made of witty retorts or louder voices. With assertions that are backed up, solid foundations are formed. By a set of reasons backed up by evidence. Consider my co-workers' clients who have taken on different roles. On how to deal with their rapid expansion, Ranjit urged that they should stay in their current location. As well as establishing a scattered workforce, Eric, on the other hand, lobbied for a larger room. According to Ranjit's argument, it is preferable to provide a work-from-home alternative. Eric's assertion, it's best to keep this in mind. All of the personnel at one place. These assertions are statements that support the argument, so they must be true. They ought to be debatable. Both Ranjit's and Eric's allegations may be refuted. If Eric had responded, "I don't like working from home," it would have been a different story. Or, as Ranjit put it, "Many folks I know enjoy working from home." These claims would not have been debatable. They don't allow people to disagree because they don't tolerate it. Personal beliefs aren't strong foundations. For a well-thought-out argument, the word "because" is followed by a list of reasons. And give evidence to back up assertions. Ranjit urged that the present space should be preserved. It's also ideal to have a distributed work alternative, because it provides employees with additional options. When Ranjit questioned Eric about why he backed the move, Eric replied, "Because I believe in it." Into a bigger room, Eric had a good excuse. Due of physical proximity makes you feel like you're part of a family. This is an element of the company's commitment to its workers. But if Eric had asked Ranjit why he was worried, he would have gotten a different answer. Rather than taking a gamble on a bigger space, that would have been a poor debate strategy, to say the least. A logical blunder. Be wary of substituting a hypothetical assertion for a real one. Accompanied by a warped version of it, Ranjit has never claimed to be afraid of taking risks. On a bigger scale, if Ranjit had claimed that Eric is too old, he would have won. To comprehend the desires of younger employees, that would have been a terrible argument, to say the least. Another blunder. A good argument necessitates the use of solid evidence. To prove one's point, Ranjit shared information from a study that showed that 87% of employees choose to pick their own workplace. Eric shared information from a study that revealed that workplaces with a physical location have a greater retention rate as well as create more unique items. Assuming that both studies came from neutral sources, as well as genuine samples, this evidence could be regarded as trustworthy information. If Eric had said that to everyone he'd spoken to, encourages the acquisition of a larger space, that would not have been sufficient proof. It's easy to rely on your own personal experience as proof. More anecdotal evidence, however, does not imply more accurate facts. When Ranjit volunteered his assistance from a professor for scattered workforces who teaches organizational structure optimization, it was a case of relying on authority evidence. When Eric retorted that one of the board members desired, this was weaker evidence as a result of the relocation to a larger space. Evidence from someone in a position of authority is more credible than proof from someone in a position of authority. Builds strong arguments on solid grounds. You'll also be able to communicate reliable conclusions. To assist in making sensible decisions, we're all prone to making poor arguments, especially when feelings are running strong. However, when it comes to communication, critical thinking serves as a guidance. You must be able to debunk false arguments, others' creations as well as you. The challenge is to expose in a way that is not offensive, that promotes good conversation, not enraged discord. It won't be simple, but it is possible. Allow me to tell you a story about Hector. Hector recently left a huge corporation and founded a little new business. And a few of his new co-workers were unsure about his abilities with the startup of new businesses. Let's pretend I'm making a claim. Hector is clueless when it comes to business, since he has only ever worked for big corporations. So, what are your thoughts? Is this a persuasive argument? To determine whether an argument is good or terrible, consider the following factors. 2 lessons should be kept in mind. To begin, revealing a flawed argument. Revealing a faulty conclusion is not the same as exposing a faulty conclusion. Second, a strong argument can be followed by a strong conclusion. It's possible. Hector cannot get the concept of entrepreneurship. That could be an appropriate conclusion. However, without giving solid proof, implying that working in major corporations inhibits one from grasping the concept of entrepreneurship, the rationale is flawed, therefore the argument is flawed as well. Disagreements should not be dismissed lightly, as though they were just signs of stupidity or your opponent's nefariousness. People who are intelligent can make poor arguments. Bad people can also make persuasive arguments. Communication that allows for critical thinking allows for the examination of ideas, independent from whoever the concepts are clinging to. The most prevalent red flags for a disastrous argument are logical fallacies that cause the argument to be distorted. The straw man fallacy is a common occurrence. When someone falsifies another's claim after that, he defends the skewed version, as if that was the assertion made. When Fatima, a hospital's HR director, advised them to postpone engaging a diversity consultant, Fatima, Maria responded, was implying that they minimize diversity. Maria then stated that diversity should not be overlooked. Fatima never said anything about it. That was a fallacious argument, a straw man. The fallacy of the empty man occurs when someone concocts a ludicrous scenario it's attributed to a supposedly genuine person, but ill-defined adversary. After that, he makes a counter-argument. Martin is the vice president of engineering. Was arguing against the removal of a specific coding challenge. For the purpose of evaluating engineering applicants, he asserted, some HR professionals want to make it as simple as possible. Anyone can acquire a job. HR kinds are a nebulous foe. And implying that these HR professionals want to hire anyone. This is a ludicrous claim. That was the empty man's argument, and it was a lousy one. In order to avoid unintentional fallacies, begin by identifying areas of agreement. We both want to avoid falling behind our rivals due to a lack of exceptional engineers. Make an effort to restate your opponent's assertions in a clear manner. Allow me to double-check that I understand your stance. Will you promise to let me know if I make a mistake? Determine what you've learnt from your adversary. Any form of email campaign didn't occur to me. When it came to selling security software, he was extremely successful. That study revealed that video emails have a high open rate. Was eye-opening. In addition, when it comes to revealing the flaws in your opponent's arguments, don't point out the fallacy you've discovered, as if it were a question on a quiz show. Furthermore, it is difficult to predict whether your opponent twisted your argument on purpose. Perhaps they simply didn't grasp the concept. Finally, practice restating your argument's outline. Alternatively, you may ask your opponent to paraphrase your point. If people correctly interpret your assertions and justifications, you know you're arguing in a level playing field. If they continue to misunderstand your point after you've rephrased it, recognize that now isn't the right time. For communicating critical thoughts several years ago, I went to a launch party for a corporate client. Katrina and Deshawn, 2 leaders, we were arguing politics. I was taken aback. But I was even more taken aback that their discussion was unusually productive. They began to draw a large throng. Katrina presented what appeared to be compelling evidence To substantiate her claim, Deshawn rebutted by saying, the sample size was insufficient. To be able to rely on this specific research, Deshawn then inquired if Katrina had any more solid proof. To substantiate her claim, Katrina seemed perplexed. Deshawn astonished their growing fanbase at that point. He explained, I don't think your quiet means you agree with me, Kat. I haven't yet presented sufficient evidence to back up my allegation. Would you mind if I shared some convincing reasons with you? To substantiate my claim and a convincing reason to believe in your cause. Deshawn's remark, as well as Katrina's answer, were the quintessential expressions of critical thinking. I'd love that and I'd hate it, she added about Deshawn. The audience laughed. She went on to say, we are both aware of the distinction between a persuasion and a strong argument and a convincingly terrible argument. Please persuade me with a compelling argument. And expect everyone to do the same. They understood that persuasion is both an art and a science in and of itself. Considering the importance of effective communication demands persuasion by good arguments. They were also aware that there is a distinction between persuading your adversary to say or pretend to agree with you and genuinely persuading them to accept your point of view. This is how you do it. First and foremost, find at least one thing you enjoy regarding a certain point of your opponent's argument. This is frequently encountered in goals that are similar or shared. Kat and Deshawn both have the same goal in mind. Creating a diverse workplace culture is a difficult task. They can't agree on how to get there. If you can't decide what you want to do, in response to your opponent's argument, you aren't looking closely enough. If they can't think of anything positive to say about your argument, to make it easier for people to find it, make it more visible. Katrina brought up their common purpose. Deshawn made a point that they were both anticipating the outcome, a combination of two separate diversification programs. Second, make a case in favor of your opponent's point of view. Deshawn and Katrina had met before. With respect to each other's stance, when Katrina reported her findings, it was a game changer. That was in direct opposition to her stance. Deshawn smiled and even clapped. He then returned the favor by offering an idea that was in direct opposition to his own views. They both pledged as well. Demonstrated they were willing to modify their minds. The third is blemish by admitting to a flaw in your own argument before presenting a compelling case for support. Katrina tarnished her reputation by admitting one trial appeared to be promising for agreeing with Deshawn's point of view. He did, however, provide a second. Research was carried out by the company that provided the training. It was probably more skewed. She cited an independent study as an example. Deshawn blemished his reputation by consenting that there was the possibility of a clash. After that, authority was emphasized. By presenting evidence to back up his claim based on an unbiased poll conducted by a reputable institution, a group of nearly 8,000 top executives. When you can persuade others with your reasoning, it's a win-win situation. You're not fooling yourself. Convincing yourself that your opponent agrees with you, you wore them down because you wore them down. You will, however, discover more about your shared beliefs, as well as the reasoning behind their convictions. It's one thing to understand the fundamentals. What are some good critical thinking questions to ask? It's one thing to say something, but it's another to actually ask them. Critical thinking frequently gets to the heart of the matter of people's beliefs, thus critical thinking is necessary. Important questions can be touchy. But if you're serious about finding out the truth, you must ask in order to make the finest decisions. Let's go to the heart of the matter. For the purpose of achieving critical thinking goals and how to approach them, our framework at Applied Curiosity Lab is as follows. To help you recall important critical thinking questions, PIQ-PAC stands for purpose, and PIQ-PAC stands for PIQ-PACC. Information, questions, and viewpoints, conclusions, assumptions, and notions. Purpose inquiries help to explain objectives. What are we attempting to achieve? What other objectives might we consider? Background information is provided through information questions about how we learn to believe the things we do. You could lessen the questions about information. This is fascinating, she says. Before inquiring, or out of curiosity, on what evidence are you basing that statement? What kind of information might be available that we haven't thought of? We can learn more by asking questions. The caliber of our inquiries, and how we might be able to ask better questions. What can we learn if we ask the question in a different way? What might we discover if we posed a different question? Questions about perspective indicate one's point of view, or the context in which ideas or thoughts emerge. What perspective are you considering this from? Is there a different angle we could take? Questions about assumptions reveal what we take for granted. Assumptions are especially sensitive. As a result, it's preferable to start by questioning yourself aloud. What am I guessing is incorrect here? What are you assuming? You can then inquire. And what makes you think that? And under what circumstances could that assumption be incorrect? Questioning about concepts clarifies what you're talking about. Consider the terms success and equality. Diversity, innovation, and even growth are all factors to consider. We're not always aware of what we're doing. They're all referring to the same thing. We won't be able to ask concept inquiries if we don't take the time to do so. We lack the required clarity. For communicating critical thoughts, are we all on the same page? You might inquire here. Does this notion have the same meaning? In what ways could this term or word be perplexing? What is another way to look at this concept? Conclusion questions allow us to double-check our understanding. The reasons why we hold the beliefs we do. Begin by asking yourself, have I given sufficient reasons? For the sake of my conclusion. Can you explain your reasoning? You can then ask, is there another reasonable conclusion? When you use the PIQ-PAC framework, you get a lot of benefits. An agreed-upon method of posing the most important questions about critical thinking. You can make a suggestion on any topic where there is a disagreement. Let's use the PIQ-PAC framework to check sure we're on the right track. We're pondering this in the most intelligent manner possible. Let me know how you found using the PIQ-PAC framework to be beneficial. You dissect your thoughts, it also improves the effectiveness of your conversation. That there was the possibility of a clash after that, authority was emphasized. By presenting evidence to back up his claim based on an unbiased poll conducted by a reputable institution, a group of nearly 8,000 top executives. When you can persuade others with your reasoning, it's a win-win situation. You're not fooling yourself. Convincing yourself that your opponent agrees with you, you wore them down because you wore them down. You will, however, discover more about your shared beliefs, as well as the reasoning behind their convictions. 07 Asking essential questions. On the 28th of January 1986, Americans huddled in front of their televisions to witness the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger. I recall being ecstatic, owing to the fact that one of the 7 crew members was a teacher and my mother, who was a teacher in NASA's space program. I also recall being astonished and saddened as I watched. When 73 seconds have passed since takeoff, the whole crew was killed when the Challenger exploded. There are a lot of things that could go wrong. A launch of the space shuttle, the ultimate culprit, though, was an O-ring. Temperature is a factor that affects O-rings. The O-ring on Challenger has been subjected to a 53-degree temperature test. In Cape Canaveral, Florida, the weather is usually warm. However, on the day of the unveiling of the Challenger, why did it happen while it was a frigid 36 degrees outside? Following a thorough study, the bigger question was, why did they take off in the first place? Disasters can occur for a variety of reasons. The Challenger disaster was an example of this. The main factor was groupthink. The months leading up to the Challenger accident were tumultuous. NASA was in desperate need of excellent publicity. They needed to win, and there was a lot of pressure on them from within. There are both internal and exterior variables at play. They had always triumphed over technical difficulties. There have even been issues with O-rings in the past. The expedition had already been delayed significantly. Christa Mcauliffe, an astronaut teacher, planned to broadcast a live class from the International Space Station. Time the kids were enrolled in classes, President Ronald Reagan was planning a party. In his speech, he announced the launch. NASA was under a lot of pressure to complete the project. As a result of the group's choice to go public, despite the fact that there are recognized technological difficulties, there are several fundamental ways for avoiding groupthink. From suffocating transmission of critical thought, the Challenger catastrophe serves as a sobering lesson. That groupings of people, even if they are solid, people who are extremely intelligent, can make poor, high-stakes decisions. When members choose harmony above unanimity, the result is a win-win situation. And command of critical thinking communication when making crucial decisions as a group, bring in a debunker of myths, someone who will question the status quo. A natural skeptic is an ideal assumption buster, who is prone to questioning or doubting group thought, not a pessimist who is always pessimistic. Furthermore, an assumption buster cannot be punished for dissenting or questioning authority or consensus. According to research, when we discuss concerns, we are more likely to find solutions. Only when we're with folks who agree with us do we become even more extreme. In our opinion, it's more riskier. This polarization of the group dynamics, not better reasons, are to blame. Allow the assumption buster to test your assumptions, to establish your case, and then switch roles. 5 rocket engineer contractors attempted to halt the mission. The launch of the Challenger in 1986, NASA retaliated by enforcing the contractors' compliance in order to demonstrate that it was not safe to launch. Rather than presenting evidence to back up their claims, it was safe, according to the engineer's testimony. Collect opinions in a non-biased and anonymous manner. People can be influenced by groups in significant ways, who could disagree in private and have a wealth of untapped knowledge. When faced with protracted decision processes or delays, keep an eye on collective decision weariness. As a result of decision fatigue, groups that are unable to reach an agreement become exhausted. Give up and cultivate any mindset you want. Teams might sometimes become stuck in go mode due to decision fatigue. NASA was initially informed by the rocket engineers. They refused to sanction the Challenger's launch on that particular day. The O-rings couldn't be used since it was too chilly. However, they were not hired as independent contractors and were fired. When do you want us to launch? Next April, according to NASA. When data contradicts politics and pressure, it's time to take action. Make your point using strong reasons and make it obvious that you would place a premium on data that is both dependable and relevant. Despite hours of debate and mountains of material, finally, the NASA contractor gave up and decided to participate in the launch. The evidence was apparent, but politics and pressure got in the way. It's simple to believe you'll pay attention. People who speak out against the group's consensus should be encouraged. However, groupthink makes this difficult. Make a commitment and develop a strategy to make critical thinking communication a priority, and you'll stay away from the blind spots that may be disastrous. Are you a pessimist or an optimist when it comes to arguments? Argument optimists believe that if you look hard enough, you will find something. In every argument, there is a common ground to be discovered. Argument pessimists believe that common ground is rarely found in persons who have a lot of disagreements, and the wisest course of action is to stay out of it, or persuade an opponent to give up. I'm a believer in the power of argument. Perhaps you've reached an arrangement with the person with whom you're dealing with a difficult problem, or that you both want the best outcome for the people that matter to you. Whatever the case may be, If you and your partner are both prepared to dive deep enough, you will find common ground and resolve your significant differences. Won't get in the way of productive conversation. Ronette and Jaume, two of my closest friends, have a lot of disagreements. They argue, according to Jaume, because they care. They welcome new information that broadens their understanding, their comprehension, and they are willing to change their heads. I've even seen them drastically change their minds. Held beliefs. They differ without being abrasive. This is how you do it. Make sure your body language is ready. Demonstrate that you're paying attention and not just planning your response. Ronette leans in close and maintains a relaxed eye contact. Carries on a lovely tone and nods in agreement with Jaume's points, even the points with which she disagrees. Jaume also has a superb sense of body language. And, despite his addiction to his phone, he carefully refrains from pulling it out to double-check the facts. Ronette and Jaume both admitted to having strong feelings about their friendship and fiercely about a conflict. It's critical to keep the individual separate from the position. There is no such thing as a bad idea when it comes to critical thinking communication. No one is under inquiry, and no one is beneath decency. Ronette and Jaume don't talk down to one another. They don't try to rope people with subtle digs. Compel them to join their side of the debate, to form a gang, as it were. Avoid expressing wrath or indicating a moral position, or a lack of cognitive ability. Consider giving a compelling argument in response to this response. Oh, what a beautiful heart you have. Having your opponent turn to a group of people is another option. Did she actually say that, you might wonder. If someone speaks to you in that tone, be wary. You may try something similar to this. Right now, what I'm saying may seem counterintuitive. But bear with me. I'll listen to you out, and then we'll see what we can do together. Where we can be mistaken, my own strongly held beliefs are probably more aligned. Jaume is better with Ronette than he is with Jaume. But not for the same reasons that Ronette does. Be mindful of the erroneous consensus bias, because it will deceive you into believing that others are. All of those who agree with you do so for the same reasons. And those who oppose you are all opposed to you because of the same causes. This is something you might notice if someone says that is the viewpoint of the opposing party. Complexity is ignored when thinking in binary terms, as well as the fact that there are a variety of viewpoints. The majority of Ronette and Jaume's points are well made. They're good at it, after all. However, they occasionally like tossing a weak argument into the mix. It's tempting to go after the weak arguments and proclaim your victory. Instead, relate your points to the greatest evidence available of what your adversary is asserting, not to other claims that are the most flimsy, or making statements that aren't true. You'll know you're not celebrating a phony victory this way. When you have a strong disagreement with someone, perhaps you've had enough of the squabble. When you don't believe any proof will persuade you to change your mind, don't get involved. However, if you and your partner are both argument optimists, and you're looking for a solution or the truth, you want to win the debate more than you want to win the argument. Take a chance on critical communication thinking. You're about to ask a question, aren't you? When you try to explain something, someone interrupts you and says, I'm anticipating your response. Or you're in the middle of describing a problem. I know what you're doing wrong, they say, interrupting. To be honest, I'm not overjoyed. I've noticed that I'm prone to jumping to conclusions like this. When we're in a conversation and we're feeling overwhelmed or emotional, we may have a tendency to avoid asking probing inquiries. Disregard our own presumptions can lead to a potentially incorrect judgment. Brad was an outstanding engineer, but his new supervisor, Rosa, was not. He was passed over for a major honor, since she was well aware of Brad's lack of regard for her. Rosa has been on the receiving end of such treatment previously. Brad had skipped Rosa's welcoming party, avoided eye contact, and kept his distance from her. Rosa's equity initiative seemed to be unimportant to her. Rosa was never interested in learning. Brad was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. His mother was gravely ill. He was also working on a high-profile project and was under a lot of strain. Perhaps Brad didn't respect Rosa, or perhaps he did. Rosa's impulsive leap, however, was not fueled by adequate facts. To arrive to a correct judgment with ease, making assumptions in your thoughts, however, is not a good idea. Those aren't supported by solid evidence. Can cause you to communicate in an unproductive manner. Might make you decide to stop communicating altogether when you have a pressing need to. So, what do you have to say? When someone makes a hasty judgment about you, you want people to come to a more accurate conclusion, don't you? First, rather than pondering what you can say, consider what questions you might be able to ask. You have the option to inquire. If you've arrived to the wrong idea about me, here's what you need to know. Are I able to provide proof? In order to arrive at a more accurate conclusion. If critical thinking and communication are important to them, they'll want to be sure their conclusions are correct. Prepare to present proof. To provide evidence for a more accurate conclusion. When Brad learned that he had been passed up for the prize, he was devastated. I subsequently heard rumors that he had treated Rosa badly. He asked Rosa this question directly. Rosa agreed to listen to Brad's reasons after he explained them to her. He explained why he had been unable to attend Rosa's welcome celebration. As soon as he began to speak, Rosa interjected and stated, about Rosa's equity project. You're implying that you're uninterested in my equity initiative. When someone interrupts you and leaps to a conclusion that is incorrect, you can inquire about what they believe you're saying. Is it okay if I offer my slightly different take on it? Rosa was the one who asked Brad this inquiry. She was receptive and non-aggressive. Rosa, on the other hand, continued to believe Brad was unconcerned in relation to her equity initiative because she had a label for Brad that said he was an older man. When someone believes they know what you're thinking, try stating, because of a label they've applied to you, or because of a label they've connected to you. Because labels can be deceiving, would it be of interest to you to learn how I think? This set of questions offered a fresh perspective. Rosa must arrive at a more accurate conclusion. Most problems do not have a single cause. When you're prone to jumping to assumptions, believe people are trying to get you or are unconcerned about your well-being, it has the potential to harm both your career and your emotional health. To keep yourself from leaping to judgments, begin with a sense of wonder. The most important thing you should ask yourself is, I'm not sure what I'm missing. When you shift your focus away from assuming a response, you can feel more secure when you ask a question. That the conclusions you reach are not the consequence of your efforts as a result of a bad jump. Can you recall a time when you agreed with a decision, with a firm conviction, or argued a point of view only to discover that the evidence was growing and directing your attention in a different direction? Changing our minds can be really difficult. However, this skill, to make one's mind up, critical thinking necessitates this. Even if we have the ability to modify our views to ourselves in private, it can be difficult to communicate such change to the public. And when we see others battling with the same problem, it makes us feel better. It's difficult to know what to say. In order to make things easier for them, especially when we know they've been completely wrong, you can begin by expressing gratitude. On complicated subjects, there is a lot of uncertainty. Say anything like, these are more complicated issues than I'd like to believe. There is a lot we don't know, to be sure. I don't know a lot of things. As evidence begins to mount in support of your position, or in support of an opposite viewpoint, use cautionary statements. A caveat statement can sound like this: assuming we're able to verify this new information, would you consider making a change? And how should we approach this? I notice a shift in how to think about things, for example. Assuming we can verify this fresh knowledge. As people begin to change their minds, take note. And refrain from making corrections, because it has the potential to backfire by boosting the strength or aversion to their previous way of thinking. This is referred to as the backfire effect. And it's critical to stay away from this. Consider something like, it's easy to see how you came to that conclusion, especially in light of the data available at the time. Or, if you're the one who's starting to change your mind, you might say, give me some time to process this new information. If I need to refresh my thoughts, I'll do so. I'll do it. I told you so, don't say. Because they'll be looking for you for the chance to speak it back to you. If somebody say to you, I told you so, don't take it personally. Attempt to respond, yes, you did. Remember, those who have been persuaded against their will are still of the same mind. Also, consider outmoded viewpoints to be sunk expenses. Whether you maintain your antiquated viewpoints or modify your mind to reflect new information, you will not be able to reclaim that time. You are not your outmoded viewpoints. Your new perspectives are opportunities that have only recently been realized. If you don't cling to your out-of-date viewpoints, when you're ready to make a public change of heart, try expressing it like this: the information I had at the time was insufficient. I'm aware that we're always working with incomplete data. However, now that we have this additional information, I believe it is prudent to update my viewpoint. Once you've gotten used to changing your mind in the middle of a conversation, you turn into a role model for others, who will be at ease with altering their thoughts. As a result, the other elements become more important. Communication becomes considerably easier as a result of critical thinking. I really anticipate hearing from you concerning critical thinking and communication is assisting you. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.